basically, like fake information. How do you,
Yeah,
as a company, differentiate between fake and real?
sure. This is where the public, yeah, it's the public information officer. This is where the role gets so complicated. This is where the role gets so complicated. And in fact, it's not just what we found is invariably you don't, if you're running an incident management team, it's not just one person. You're going to need a team of people to help that person these days, because you almost need one person monitoring each social media platform to pick up on the fake news. It's actually a big problem in South Africa. It was highlighted by an article I read online recently, where South Africa is one of the hotspots in the world for the spread of fake news. And they've actually arrested people over here now for spreading fake news. I think what's very important is it almost comes down to educating. The way we educate our kids, I think, needs to evolve. We're still educating in a way that's been going on for about 100 years. We've still got it's maybe evolved. We're using computers now. We're using all sorts of interactive tools, but the core of the education is kind of the same. What we're not educating people on is how to exist in the modern world that we all live in. How do you go out and sort of navigate this world? How do you navigate the business to business, person to person relationships, and how do you navigate fake news? And there's always been rumors and fake news going around, but in this age with so many social media platforms and the ease of communication, it honestly spreads like a virus, pardon the pun, or wildfire. But I think it's important that each person understands they have a responsibility to just, and it doesn't take long. I mean, we've got so much ability these days to fact check stuff. It doesn't take long to fact check something, to go on and just double check a few websites, read up on it, and you can make a pretty informed decision. Is this real or not? As a member of the public, I think that's an important thing that we should be doing. And I think it's something we should be bringing through into our education, is teaching our kids in schools, like because the wrong information can have such a bad consequence. And I'll bring it into an incident. The wrong information, and during the Neisner fires, we had this going on. There was fake news going on during the incident, and there was no incident management team in place. Even in 2017, after ICS had been in the country for close on 10 years, it still wasn't widespread enough. There were still areas where the people weren't trained, and Neisner, unfortunately, didn't have the training. So when it hit, the municipality and the fire services, which were very, very small, both of them were totally overwhelmed. They were trying to get information out. There was an order to evacuate the entire town at one point, but there was no clear process. Once the order was given, they thought they'd done that. That's it. The order has been given, but they didn't understand that there was no way for that order to get down the line out to the people. There wasn't a plan. So that role, the public information officer, whose responsibility is to make sure the information from the management team gets out to the public, and you want to communicate as much as possible. You need to communicate all the time what's happening, where are the risk areas, what is not at risk, what is fake. If you hear that an area is burning and it isn't, immediately inform people that it isn't. What we had people evacuate from one area to another area where they thought they were going to be safer, but they evacuated from near a big lake, up a mountain or up a hill, through thick vegetation, across the face of the fire, down a one-way road to an area on the coast, which is the only way out was a beach. So, again, being on top of that information and having understanding that this area is not under major threat, it's far safer to keep everyone in that area, let the fire burn through, than it was to have everyone evacuate out of there down a one-way road into a town where, again, they were then surrounded and trapped. So it's that kind of thing where I think that information role is so vitally important. For me, it's the incident commander, the public information officer, and the safety officer, almost the three most crucial roles in an incident management team. Communication, the knowledge these days is safety. It's so important to have the right information go out. But it's a 24-hour job monitoring the fake news, and some of it's very good, and some of it is meant to cause disruption, and some is just because people are panicking and don't understand the situation. That gets misinterpreted and spread around, and So it has a huge impact. One of the parts of this campaign we're working with this municipality is to try and get that understanding of the impact of fake news on people. It's kind of that, like a Chinese whispers, where you, by telling people that information and having it broken down, the wrong information getting to people is almost as dangerous as them having no information.
I do mention, because I noticed that looking at, because I am the system I try to use to find truth, basically, or perspective truth, is to cross-reference everything that's being up. But that includes, for me, government information and information that are from well-known institutions and that ought to be trusted. But even in these times, I need to cross-reference that, because a lot of the information coming out there can't be trusted as well. So as a public information officer, that must be a really interesting task to do.
Yes, I think it's very difficult. I think, during an incident, it's a little easier. I think when the incident management team, those people are normally seen as experts and doing their job. When it gets into government and politics, then there's often agendas, and no, I mean, I think globally governments have not got the respect that they used to have, and it's very hard for a government voice to bring across information that can be fully trusted. I think, again, I do the same. I cross-reference and check stuff. You never know what agendas are being driven. But one of the important points, also another role within ICS, is there's a role called the liaison officer, and their role is to deal with the people like the mayors, the politicians, keep them in the loop, but keep them out of the decision making or the incident management team. And I think, again, it's quite crucial that people understand that you can't have political agendas going on during an incident. You have to respond to the incident, sort it out, and then you can deal with politics. But unfortunately, often, and my criticism of a lot of globally, the way this crisis, the COVID crisis, is being run, is unfortunately I get the feeling that it's run a lot by politicians, which is quite astounds me, because this is an incident. It should be run by disaster management and incident responders. In South Africa, we have a COVID command council, and they are making decisions affecting everybody, and they oversee the disaster management section of government. And I still cannot. I don't get my head around how they are the chief decision makers. It should be the disaster management feeding the information, keeping the politicians in the loop about what needs to be done. And yes, of course, the political impacts from decisions, because it's such a huge. It is global and national, but the actual how to respond and what's the right things to do at the right time should be coming from the specialists and the guys who do this all the time. And I think that's the problem, is that a wildfire or a flood being run by the politicians, it would be a disaster. It's run by incident managers. It's run by responders who understand the systems. They understand the risks. And yet this crisis is it's fascinating. This crisis, which is a global crisis, seems to have jumped one level. It's gone out of the hands of all the people who have, I think, really the skills, and into the hands of the politicians, who, no matter how good their intentions, there's always at the back of their mind, I'm sure, is, am I going to get re-elected? How is this going to impact my career? So that for me is a very, very interesting part of COVID, and what the impact has had on the world.